Space Jam: A New Legacy follows NBA megastar LeBron James on his journey to get his son back after the two are forcibly separated by a digitized algorithm. So if you're a 90s baby like me, I'm willing to bet the original Space Jam holds a special place in your heart. There was nobody bigger than Michael Jordan, so the idea of combining his stardom with the infectious Looney Tunes was a genius-level idea in my opinion. Space Jam: A New Legacy follows the same idea, but it replaces Michael Jordan with LeBron James, who is arguably this generation's biggest star. I think LeBron and his team, along with Ryan Coogler, had this idea of producing a fun family film with plenty of meaning and heart. And I think they actually did a good job in that regard. The animation is done well, and the film adds plenty of Easter eggs and references that are relevant to kids today. I think the film also has an important theme suitable for kids and adults as well. I honestly think the message might even surpass that of the original Space Jam because I believe it's a more meaningful one. I also think the film looks pretty good as well. The direction is smooth and the color palette feels pretty rich. The CG looks good, and I also enjoyed the 2D animation as well. So props to everybody in the art department for this film. You could tell they really put a lot of thought and creativity into how the art side of it all came together. I also think the soundtrack played a huge part in what made the OG Space Jam work, and this soundtrack does exactly the same thing. It's fitting for the film, and it's refreshing enough for kids and or adults to listen to regularly. So overall, Space Jam: A New Legacy was a really entertaining film, especially for children. And while I do get that this film is for children, it's still a movie, and I have to judge it for what it is. And unfortunately, when you take away that kid factor and those heartfelt moments, the film suffers tremendously. The 1996 Space Jam was no Oscar-worthy film, and the story was very basic, but I understood the plot, the conflict, and the resolution. Those are basic elements to any story, and Space Jam: A New Legacy somehow manages to mess this up. Aspects of the plot feel rushed, and I may go into spoiler territory from here on out, so I apologize in advance. This would include spoilers for both this film and the old Space Jam. So if you don't want any parts of this being ruined, skip to the time on screen to avoid any possible spoilers. So if you're still here, the original Space Jam's plot centers around the Tunes being threatened to become the attractions for a failing amusement park owner if they lose a basketball game. The aliens that work with this owner steal the power source from NBA players, creating the Monstars. So this prompts the Tunes to seek help from who other than Michael Jordan, right? We are given effective images that allow us to understand the stakes, including how well they make the conflict feel more serious, and in return creates anticipation and a feeling of satisfaction towards the end of the film. A New Legacy doesn't do this. LeBron is stuck with the Tunes, and we're given some plot-convenient reason that doesn't make any sense as to why. We're force-fed the stakes from this algorithm, and with LeBron's lack of panic, it doesn't have the same effect. In the original, Jordan is fighting for the Tunes and himself. So sure, it's serious, but LeBron is fighting for not only him and his son, but his whole family randomly, along with hundreds of others as well who just randomly get plopped into this situation. Not to mention the deletion of the Tunes if he loses, and we barely get any sense of panic from this guy. Also, we don't even get introduced to the Monstars or the villains in this movie until the game actually starts, and that's the other problem I had here. There was no real lead up to the game, it just kind of begins out of nowhere. The whole film just felt rushed, and it shouldn't have, because it was almost 2 damn hours long. Instead of working out a decent story or build up to any of the characters in the film, The movie spends the majority of its time making sure there was enough product placement or things to make the audience go, ooh, I know what that is. The acting was also pretty bad in this movie, and while I'm willing to forgive it to a degree because that's not the main focus of this kind of a film, there are actually movies made for kids that are acted wonderfully. So I kind of have to ding this movie for that as well, because that's no excuse. With all this being said, we have to ask ourselves, is A New Legacy worth watching? Not trying to compare it to the old Space Jam, but simply, is this movie worth watching? I think people who grew up with the original shouldn't try to compare these two films, because I do think you might be disappointed. It misses a lot of the personality and character that the original had, and the story also wasn't as good either. Now, with that being said, I do think this movie is worth the watch. It's entertaining and it's full of heart. The message is good, and the animation is also cool to look at. And the social relevance also makes it a fun flick, especially for kids. And that's important because they are exactly who this film was made for. And for that, I have to give Space Jam just a regular decent. What did you guys think of this one? How do you think it stacks up to the old Space Jam, and which one do you prefer? Now, I know some of us may be biased, such as myself, who grew up with the original Space Jam, but I do want to know what you guys thought about it in the comments below. Anyways, I just wanted to say thanks, as always, for taking your time to check out my reviews. Please continue to stick with us, as there's going to be more comment on the way. In the meantime, I just want to say thanks again, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.